everybody, and welcome to another, hopefully, exciting episode of JayEmm Friends. I am the JayEmm, and this is my friend, the oft-seen Mr. Antony Marcano of Sports and Touring. He's been helping me this week with a number of chores, as he often does, but one in particular that I thought he would relish, but doesn't, is driving this, a Ferrari FF. Now, the FF happens to be not just one of my favourite Ferraris, but one of my all-time favourite cars. And when I said to Antony, hey, do you want to drive an FF? I thought he was going to go, yes, of course I do, because that's how I feel about it. But instead he said, yeah, all right, just don't really have any interest in it. So I thought, this is an interesting opportunity, because I can kind of see many reasons why people wouldn't really be into the FF. It's not really the poster child in the Ferrari lineup. It's not a 458, it's not an F12, but it has elements of all of those cars, and I think it's one that you simply cannot fail to fall in love with. Today, we're going to see if my theory holds true. And what is it you don't like about the car, you Scrooge?
Look, to me, a Ferrari is a car that you lust after. And, you know, in a way, I suppose it's innovative because they pretty much created a super hatch instead of a hot hatch. But it's just a hatchback to me. And I'm just not into hatchbacks. Never have been. Actually, once, when I was a teenager.
Shooting brake, you Philistine.
Yeah, hatchback, same thing. All I can say is I've never driven one. I feel privileged to have the opportunity to actually try it. But if I'm honest, it doesn't excite me at all. It's all superficial. It's all looks. Like, I wouldn't be, you know, cruising along down the high street thinking, oh yeah, let me catch my reflection in the mirror. Now that to me is the best view of this particular car. That 6.3 litre V12. I mean, look at it, it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful thing to look at. I'm sure it's a beautiful thing to listen to.
Oh, you'll really like this one, because it's got an exhaust on it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Oh no, this sounds proper, this one.
Oh, good.
You haven't heard it, have you?
I haven't heard this one yet.
Oh, no, you'll like this one.
Oh, gosh. We're just doing a bit more filming for James's review. We're catching a few little, you know, beauty shots of the car. And I got to appreciate the interior of the FF. And when you do look at it, it is absolutely gorgeous. You know, all of the carbon that's here, the leather, the diamond stitch, the carbon in the door with the leather, just everything about it is absolutely gorgeous. But of course, unusually, it works like a hatchback, where you can sit in the back.
Right, let me put this to my driving position.
Okay, go on.
Ow! I can drive that comfortably like that.
Yeah, I could just about survive a not too long a journey like that. I do like that electric sliding it forward to give you a bit more space to get out. What was interesting is when I was checking out the back seat for the first time, I realised it has a glass roof. I didn't even notice that when I was in the front seat. Nice little touches, the OMG handles, as I'm going to call them. Tiny amount of storage, just as much as you would ever need, with the space for a charger. Cup holders with a little bit of felt here. These, you know, fighter jet style vectored thrust air vents here. I've actually got headroom. You can see that, you know, I'm near the glass roof, but not too near to it. When I was growing up, my dad had one of these. I'd be very happy to be sitting in the back of one of these. Very happy indeed. Just because I really like the interior doesn't mean that I'm changing my mind about this car.
Worth pointing out that in, you know, fairness and balance and all that jazz, Antony has driven the F12 for a fair amount of time, so there is no chance of him simply being wowed by the fact it's a V12 Ferrari. He's driven those before, and it's no chance of him being wowed by a hatchback, because he's driven those before as well and clearly not fallen in love with them. I think it's a lot more than just a Golf GTI that's been down to the gym, but I suppose really the proof of the pudding is in the driving. Yep, and I'll give it a go, but if I was going to liken it to a VW, it would be more like a souped up Sirocco, but you know, look, I take it back, It is actually a very, very good looking car, and I'm sure it's to certain people's tastes. Looks wise, it just isn't for mine. I can look at the front of it, I just don't want to look at the back of it, that's all the side. What?
Let's just jump in, let's just jump in the car, and let's see if it changes my mind. Oh wow, well I tell you what, it might look like a hatchback in my mind, but it doesn't drive like one. This drives like a Ferrari. It sounds like a Ferrari. A beautiful V12 Ferrari with 6.3 litres and around 650 horsepower. All-wheel drive, some of which going through the front wheels, but most of it going through the rear. And you do feel that balance, particularly on a slightly greasier road like this, when you start to get your foot down out of the corner. Oh, that sound! So FF means Ferrari 4. 4 all-wheel drive, 4 seats in the car. But when you get in it and you're driving it, it's just like the F12. It is rapid, sounds incredible. The steering rack is very, very quick, very quick. You really don't have to put that much steering input into this car. The feel through the steering wheel is absolutely fantastic. Even though I've got it in sport mode right now, I could live with it being just a little bit heavier. There's only maybe one other car that I've ever driven, maybe two, that the steering is any faster and more sensitive than this, and one of those was a Caterham. But it's glorious. I absolutely love it. When you're going into a corner, you can feel just how much grip you've got, and on a day like today, I'll be honest, it doesn't have a great deal. But I suppose that's what makes this car the right car for a day like today, rather than something like the F12. I loved the F12. I say loved. Present tense, I still love the F12. And this has a lot of its character, but I think is actually slightly less intimidating, because you can feel when you are going through a corner and you're squeezing that throttle on as you're coming through the exit, you can feel that little bit of pull at the front. It's not a lot, it's not overwhelming. It feels like it's a little bit less than, say, on my R8 GT. That has about 30% goes to the front. I'm told that only 20% of the power goes to the front of this. And even on a chilly day like today, with the roads being quite greasy, you still feel like you can actually put your foot down. Oh, it's got this lovely like rotation, but with help. That's how I would explain it when you're going through that corner. The F12 is much more, you know, any more than that and it wants to kill you. This car doesn't feel like it wants to kill you. This car feels like it just wants you to show it some respect. Don't get me wrong, you know, in the right conditions or the wrong conditions, I'm pretty sure that this would certainly put the average driver in their place. Even though superficially I wasn't crazy about the look of this car, as soon as I get in it, it's putting a smile on my face. As I showed you before, the interior is beautiful and actually largely quite ergonomic. There's a few things hidden away, like if you want to unlock the doors, you'll find that on the roof, and if you want to open the fuel flap, you'll find that on the floor to the right near the door. One criticism of this might be how chunky the steering wheel is. I think it might actually be around here just a little bit too much. Once you're on the road driving, you just don't even notice. And in many ways, for longer drives, having that slightly chunkier steering wheel just means that your hands can actually be in a more natural position. Rather than gripping more tightly, your hand is a little bit more open and a bit more relaxed. So when you are just trundling around a little town, the car is very relaxed. If you want, you can put it into comfort mode and put it into auto and let the car do all the work for you. Obviously, you've got a relatively firm suspension. It's not exactly a luxury cruiser, it is a GT car, but I'd say this definitely leans more towards a much sportier experience overall. Not any more or less than the F12, just the same. And that to me is the thing with this car. It seems to be the grown-ups F12. Obviously not quite as much power as the F12. This has got 650 horsepower, The F12 has, I believe, 730 horsepower, and I think more of that power is more usable more of the time. I love it. I love it. Okay, I've admitted it. I love the FF, and I think that this car would make the most sense to me if it was another one of my Ferraris. I mean, I don't have any Ferraris yet. I think what I would want, like money no object, I'd want something like an F12 or an 812, and that would be a car that I would probably drive mostly in the summertime. But when you need to take the family somewhere, and you really don't want to have to compromise on that buzz of sitting in your Ferrari, and you don't want to compromise on that overall driving experience, this is the car that I would have, as well as my other Ferraris. Now all I need to do is actually get my first Ferrari. My first thought was, I don't want to like this car. But as soon as I got in it, put a smile on my face. Almost as much as the F12.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one of those cars. Like, you get in it, you drive it, and then after a little while you kind of forget it's not an F12. And don't forget, because of the power of depreciation, these when new were more than an F12, and now they're a lot less. And today you could pick something like this up for like 110, 120, where an equivalent F12 is going to be another, realistically, 40 to 50 grand. So it's basically the same experience, but more usable, more of the time, and cheaper. On that bombshell, I guess we're going to say thank you for joining us. Please give us a like, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on JayEmm Friends.